What up, everybody? What up, everybody? As I was going to say before, I was so pleasantly interrupted by my co-host, Greinberg. This is the Dynasty Post. It's opening day of MLB. Let's go, Giants. Come on, baby.
Go Giants.
We have a great show for you today. We're showcasing rookies. The NFL draft is coming up in less than a month, and we're going to give you some names that you need to be high on. You're probably too low on them, especially mine. Especially mine, and Greinberg's too. Like, you're too low on these guys. Let's push them up your draft boards. These are guys. Hey, reach for them, and we're going to give them to you with our special guest. We got an incredible guest in the studio today. He is one of the best analysts on Twitter. He will tell you where you can find all of his content. But let's welcome the boys. I knew it was a mistake when I told Mike how to enter videos and give him control of the studio because I've never been cut off so many times. But it's a game we play. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. There's not a very high bar being the best analyst on Twitter, but I'll take it. I will take, that bar and that compliment.
I said one of the best.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take one of the best and in the top 3%, whatever that means. But no, I appreciate you guys inviting me on, chatting a little bit about some Dynasty and some of the rookies and just having some fun here. It's the silly season, as I call it right now. Everybody's bored and crazy talks happening out there on social media and stuff, and people getting mad over little things. So that this is the month to just go on podcasts and just talk it out with smart people.
Did you know that Josh Jacobs was homeless when he was okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Shout out Pat Fitzmaurice. Pat Fitzmaurice is one of the best analysts we've ever seen. Shout out to Player Profiler, and Fantasy Race Seats went after him, and it was just out of pocket. Yeah. Anyway, we got a great show. Mike is going to start it off today. And hey, Mike, let's get going.
Yeah, like Kevin said, there's not much going on right now. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into some rookies like Biggs had said, but we're going to talk a little bit about draft strategy because we got a lot of startups happening right now. A lot of startups happening before the draft. Some of them are happening after the draft, but let's talk strategy. There's three main strategies when going into a Dynasty startup, and we're talking about Superflex here. We're talking about tight end premium, the pretty much the gold standard right now in Dynasty football right now. So there's three strategies we talk about. The first one is win now. What is win now? You draft a team loaded with older players. These guys aren't going to be around that much longer, but they're still really, really good. Your team is super strong. You win your Dynasty league in the first year. That is the strategy. You put your money in, you get your money in, and that's the whole idea behind this is you're trying to win that cash, and that is the focus on win now strategy. And then you got the strategy number two, which is the productive struggle, where you tend to throw your first year. You're not trying to win at all. You're skipping over those veterans and you're going for those ascending young players. You're usually picking a good amount of rookies. And then strategy number three is the hybrid approach, where you take a mix of both. You want to still be very competitive year one and have the opportunity to win, but you really are focusing on youth as well. So, gentlemen, with all that said, three strategies, I guess, depending on where you might be picking as well, might also depict which type of strategy you go for. But Kev, what's your main goal when you are drafting, and what's the strategy that you like to use?
All right, this is a big question, overarching question in terms of how you do it. And what I would first say to everybody out there, if you go into a strategy, be very fluid. You don't have to say, I'm going win now in this draft, because the reality is if it's a 12-team league, you have 11 other managers, they might be all doing the same strategy as you. Like beforehand, they're like, oh, I'm going to go productive struggle. And then you have 11 dudes doing productive struggle, and you're like, wait a minute, I need to pivot. So I think having flexibility in a build is super important as you look at the board and you understand kind of how guys are drafting and where the run's at, all of those things. I think first, just be fluid, like going into it. Okay, how am I going to draft? So if it comes down to a point where Christian McCaffrey's fallen and I'm like, man, screw it, I'm going now. I'm going to go get Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to ride it out. Then that's how you do it. As a whole, though, what strategy do I like the most? If I could do it, I think I'm between productive struggle and hybrid. I like both. If I can do productive struggle, which is becoming more and more challenging because more people are doing it now, if I can accomplish that, though, I will go with productive struggle. But I think that you have to be very careful with kind of players you pick in productive struggle, because I do think that people could reach on rookies a little bit too much in that. And then it's always a struggle. It's no longer productive. You never get that production side. It's just struggle, struggle, struggle. So for me, be very fluid. And when you're looking at the strategies and just as the draft unfolds, understand what league mates have and understand what they're trying to accomplish and then pivot off of that, because that's the best way to probably win your league, is to understand how your other league mates are doing it and then just go the opposite way, kind of yin and yang. But I love productive struggle. That's generally speaking what I try to do, but I don't mind hybrid either.
Yeah, I'm along those lines as well, and I'll dig deeper into my strategy. But I know Biggs is on the other side for the most part. I'm speaking out of turn here, Biggs, but I know that you're a big believer in the win now. So why don't you explain that strategy?
I wouldn't say that. So the poker analogies in fantasy football always rear their ugly heads, and so I look at win now strategy as going all in when you got pocket aces. There aren't a lot of hands that are going to beat pocket aces after the flop. And then doing a kind of a wait and see approach, the hybrid method, is more like you have an okay hand, but it's not the nuts, it's not the best, especially after the flop, but you kind of like, you just keep stringing in and you're just waiting. So I have always been a proponent of dying in the first year. I have been a productive struggle magnate for a long time. Over the last couple of years, though, I've come to the understanding that doesn't always work for me. The win now draft approach more closely mirrors redraft. So basically what you're doing is you're going and getting the guys who you know that they're going to produce right away. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with taking Mike Evans in a dynasty startup. There's nothing wrong with taking Derrick Henry in a dynasty startup. Has he hit the age cliff? Absolutely. Is he on a new contract with another team? Absolutely. But you watch the guy's workouts, you see his production every year. He's going to be an elite running back just about every year until he's not. Same with Mike Evans. He's going to hit 1,000 yards until he doesn't. So basically what you're saying with the win now approach is you're not going to be the first one to bet against that happening, right? Yeah. And then what happens? You win the money, you bank it, and then you start trading guys away and you start building through the draft and through waiver wire pickups of young guys and stuff like that. So over the last few years, I have adopted that mentality going into startups. Now, I did just finish a 102-round startup draft where we start 10 running backs and 16 wide receivers, plus it's full IDP. The league is crazy. And the thing with that was the rosters got so thin at a certain point that I moved to my rookie wide receiver rankings, and I was just picking them off because they're my rankings and not everybody else's. And to me, that's also a win now approach. So if you're really sold on a guy, like you have a guy, say Marvin Harrison Jr., that you are very certain is going to come out and produce as a rookie, go ahead and take him with a win now approach, because you're banking on youth and you're banking on production. And if you're doing a win now approach, you need to find those gems. So the best thing to do for Dynasty is have leagues that you've been in before, and also get into your startup and gauge what you're looking at. Find analysts like Kevin who are nailing rookies every year and look to those guys, because they're going to help your win now approach by buffering some of those Austin Eckler's from last year and things like that.
Agreed, because those rookie gems that you can find, like a Tank Dell, that draft capital that was put into him last year, I think he was maybe round 8 or 9 guy type scenario in a startup, even later than that. Like no one was picking him, and then you can get that value. And yeah, that's a really important thing for me. I'm a hybrid approach. I think I've taken a couple bites on both ends of the spectrum when I've started a productive struggle. I didn't hit on a rookie, say a Quentin Johnson like last year, and all the metrics. If you follow you have to adjust your draft plan. Not hitting on a Quentin Johnson or say Justin Fields in a startup like this year, those are pretty big moves that are going to be costly in a productive struggle, and you're making those blind assessments. You're trying to predict the future, and it's hard to do in football in general. So I'm a bit of a safer approach kind of guy. I like to be safe in what I do until I know that all my eggs are in one basket, and then I get ultra aggressive, and then I'll sell the farm for what I need. But I'm more of the hybrid approach. I'll take the veterans when the value is there. I'm more of a value kind of ADP guy. So that'll be very much the way I draft in a startup. I'll see where the value is, and that'll really depict on where the approach I use. But going into a draft, my approach will be the hybrid, but you're going to have to pivot if a guy's value is there and you know that you can win now at that stage.
And I want to touch on 2 things real quick. Number one, what Kevin said before about being ready to adjust, being ready to pivot. As Mike Tyson said, you always have a plan until you get punched in the mouth. The other way that fantasy is a good analogy to poker is you have to read your opponents. You have to read the people who are at the table with you. And if you have a later round, like a pick later on the board, you can get a gauge of how people are drafting for a little while and adjust what kind of draft strategy you're going to use. It helps to know all 3 of them pretty extensively, and be able to adjust. There was another thing I was going to say, but I totally forgot it because is coming off what Mike just talked about. And so we'll move on.
Anything to add to that there, Kev, as far as like closing remarks regarding like the draft strategy?
So I think the interesting thing, and this is a very working theory, so don't yell at me out there, all you Dynasty diehards. But as I've dived in the last 2 years and looked at like drafts and gone through ADP, I think that these strategies are more difficult now because the running back values have changed so much. And so what you're seeing is tight end too. But tight ends help though that like we had that the emergence of some of these young guys. So now we're starting to see, 1 through 8 is a little bit more comfortable. But 100%. But I think with the running backs, the last startup I did, which I've only done one this offseason because I'm trying to cut back. I think there was 5 running backs taken in 6 rounds. That's it. So when you're looking at those 5 running backs, which is probably the tier, most people think those like the 5 tier guys that you're looking at. As the build goes, though, you're reaching on wide receiver now in the 4th and 5th round. Like when I did a video for that, I think running back 24 was drafted like round 11, whatever it was. And I remember looking at this numbers. It was like wide receiver 52 is at that same time. So when you're doing that, when the builds are that different and with the wide receiver, like you might be now reaching a little bit on wide receiver, expecting breakouts, looking at Tank Dell and some of these other guys. And then you get stuck with Jerry Jeudy for 4 years or whatever the case may be, that version of it. So I think the running back is interesting because I think you could really go win now heavy running back. I think that's possible. I think you can really dive and get some of those running backs later. But what are you leaving on the board? What are you leaving there? And then there's also a very tier break at quarterback right now. Like I think that QB 14-ish is where that's very okay. That's where I'd be comfortable to have my QB 2, not 1. And that's where I think the builds get interesting. Right now for productive struggle, having a late round pick is where the productive struggle is probably going to work because you can get Caleb, Marvin Harrison Jr., CD, Amon-Ra, those guys. If it's early, I tend to find myself looking at it like if I got Josh Allen or Mahomes or Stroud or Richardson too. I love Richardson, so I'll put him in that category. If I have one of those guys, I'm going to probably go for it. Like, all right, if I have those guys because they give me that positional advantage. So I also think draft location matters, like because where that draft is and where those tiers end and begin, that really will set the tone for how the strategy that you got to use as well.
Yeah, and in that 102 round league, that's just so crazy to say. I came out with CD, Dak, and Anthony Richardson, and I couldn't have been happier. And to your point, basically you have to understand like what the league scoring is. So if it's a single quarterback, if it's a super flex, what are you going to do going into the draft? So I think the main message is always be prepared and have multiple strategies, be able to pivot. So if you see something happening, so if you have the 10th pick and you see all of the quarterbacks that you were targeting, go for Bijan and then Breece Hall at the turn, or go for CD and then like stack from there. And I think what's happened is the zero RB approach in best ball, which is fantastic and is a winner, that has taken over and it's bled into other formats of fantasy football, and people get a little crazy with it. So you're going to be able to find running back values later, but the wide receivers that are in the elite top tier, they're going to be going early, so you have to adjust for that. And I did remember what I was going to talk about, and that was ADP. So there have been some matrices, some analyses that have come out recently that were talking about success in drafting, and one of the better approaches that is starting to bear out statistically is, instead of going by your ranking, going by ADP value. So if you are getting to the point where there are two players on the board and one of them has a higher ADP than the other, but is still there, we're overlooking those players because they're a little bit older, or they had an injury last season or something like that. So what we're going to do is, if I have the 48th pick and this guy's ADP, according to Fantasy Pros, is ADP 30, that's the guy that you want to draft, even though in your rankings, this guy who is ADP 47 is right there. You want to go with the ADP value. And there are people who are winning with a strategy of specifically drafting those ADP values. And that was what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, because you could turn value and turn that asset into something more valuable down the line. It only makes sense because somebody else might value that guy as higher than you do, even though you're not valuing him there. And ADP is speaking on consensus, right? So that's what people are drafting them as. So there's a huge chunk of people that are valuing them more than you are. So you could probably get a better deal out of it and increase your asset down the line. So I like that.
And there's a lot of reasons why people fall. Other people get steamed up for specific reasons. And a guy like, let's use Austin Eckler as an example for this season, because it's safe for me to say Austin Eckler because he's on my no draft list. But as an example, going into this 2024 season, Austin Eckler has A, hit the age curve, B, had a terrible production year last year, C, is entering a new system where there is an RB1 in place already who is better than anybody that the Chargers had. So there is nothing to indicate that Austin Eckler is going to have a productive season in 2024. But if Austin Eckler is at ADP 68 and you're sitting there at pick number 90 and Austin Eckler is there, those are the guys that you want to grab, because it's more of a dart throw, but we're in the 90s already. So take that guy who was 60, because something could happen and he could pop off. I'm not going to totally discount Austin Eckler. I'm not going to be surprised if he has a top 24 season this season. It's just not going to be on my team.
Fair. All right. I think we've hit this pretty good. I think our viewers have gotten some good strategy here, and let's get into the next segment of our show.
Is that dead horse still neighing?
Let's get into these spotlights. 3 rookies that we're going to spotlight, and we're going to put our flag plants down. We're do this right now. We got 3 guys that we all are really in. Each of us have our own guy that we're going to talk about, and we're going to start with Coleman. So 1 second. All right, Kev, that's a pretty indicator who your guy is.
Don't forget to like and subscribe the video, you guys. Like and subscribe.
Yeah, I found with algorithm sleeper, just say sleeper and it hits the algorithm a little bit more. So here's our sleeper, my sleeper for the current draft class. No, I've been an Xavier Worthy fan for a long time. I'm out here in California. He's from, in terms of that value and what you like from Xavier, like in terms of, hey, I've watched him play for a very long time. He was supposed to go to Michigan. That bastard went to Texas afterwards. He would have won a national title though. So how does that feel, Xavier? And he goes to Texas and has one of the most the best freshman season for a freshman wide receiver ever, analytically speaking. Travis May talks about it all the time. And he didn't really do much afterwards in terms of better numbers as sophomore year. Last year was fine, 1,000 yards. The thing with Xavier Worthy that I love about him, and I think that people don't understand this because they see 5'11", 165, and they get worried about the size. They think he's just a slot guy. To me, I think he's creative in all things, and he can contribute in any scheme at any spot. X, Y, or Z. Now, the way I look at him is I would love for him to find a way to the Panthers because Dave Canale's in that offense. What he does, he does not put these guys in traditional positions anymore. So what he talks about is he just puts them out there, lets them do what they do best. That's why I love Deontay Johnson this year because in that offense, it's like, oh, no, they're just going to let him run routes and get open. That's pretty good for Deontay Johnson. Same with Xavier Worthy. He has that ability. Yes, he's fast, right? 4.21. It was all that. And the thing I love about the combine that made me laugh so much. And this is just social media and Twitter, for example. He came at 165 and everybody's, oh my God, he's so small. He better run fast. Then he runs the fastest time in history of the combine. And then people are like, too fast. Nope, too fast. They're going to be bad. Bust. And I'm like, wait a minute. You can't move the goalpost that many times. You got to stick with the goalpost where it's at. So he is fast, yes, but I think he's also creative. I think that he is a deep threat. He's creative after the catch. He can do those things. And I love that about him. And I think that when you're looking at his ability, he's a returner too. So I don't know if teams are going to use him in that way, but they definitely can. So he has that upside getting on the field early and just getting that confidence of that. And after we've seen what Devonta Smith has done and Tank Dell and those guys, I don't see how you couldn't love Worthy. Now, scheme dependent, maybe if like you're looking at like where would be the best fit for him and how he rises up boards. I want him in a Shanahan system, a Slolik system, like a Canale system, something like that. If he goes to one of those guys, I'd be extremely happy. If he went to an Arthur Smith system, I would jump off a bridge. That's pretty much where I'm at with that.
Could you imagine him in Miami?
Yeah.
Learning from Tyreek?
Yeah.
That'd be so great.
That's if he could go to those type of spots, like that's where like a coach that can utilize him the right way and puts him in the right spots. And because he's not just a burner. If any coaches puts him out there on the outside, like that's not all he does. And if they can utilize him in different ways and he can earn targets, I think that Xavier Worthy is getting slept on a little bit. A lot of hate out there. I see him in the second round, a lot of rookie drafts. Like I know that when the speed hit thing, he's going the back end at first. But to me, he's worth a shot, right? Like after the top three guys, I think that his talent and upside and his ceiling is worth a shot to take a shot on.
Kevin, it's you bring up Xavier Worthy and you bring up drafts, and we did a mock draft, and in that mock draft, Xavier Worthy went in the first round. I like Xavier Worthy, and there's two metrics that stick out for me. He was second. Let me find this. Sorry, slowing this. He was second. He's second in the class in yards after catch per reception. Second in the class. That's not too shabby. And he's fifth in yards per route run versus man coverage. So if you get him out into the slot and he's going against a slower corner, or he's going against getting a linebacker in coverage in a zone defense, he's going to cook in the NFL. And I love that. And exactly what you just said. It's all landing spot specific for him. His skills as a route runner and beating man coverage, he could be an X receiver. He could get out there and burn top level cornerbacks. But if you are starting him in like a Cooper Kupp type of situation, he could be an absolute target monster. And I love that about him.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I mean, he's a burner. He's going to be able to, like, just that speed alone, I think he's going to get that first-round draft capital, and that's going to get him on the field early. And Kevin mentioned as well, he could be in special teams. You know, if he can get on the field and be in a right system, yeah, man, I love that call a lot. So,
there's a big reason why he's getting more steam than A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Biggs, let's get into your guy. I'm going to play your...
Let's get into my guy. My flag is firmly planted, and that flag is firmly planted in the state of Wisconsin. And my flag plant is Wisconsin running back Braelon Allen. Braelon Allen is my RB1 in the class. He has been my RB1 in the class since before the 2023 season started. He's going to remain my RB1 in the class. He's going to be the first running back that I'm drafting on the board, unless there is a better value there. And I will tell you why. The first reason is because of the correlation between combine measurements and production in the NFL. And we have a correlation, and rushing total points is correlated most highly with weight. And who's the heaviest running back in the class? That's Braelon Allen. You want a running back who's over 225 pounds. Braelon Allen is well over 225 pounds. And that's how you get a top 12 fantasy finish, is being a certain size. Braelon Allen is that. Another thing that we look for is production. Braelon Allen produced as a freshman. Braelon Allen produced as a sophomore. Braelon Allen produced as a junior, and he's an early declare. All of those are critical to success in the NFL. And another thing is age. He's 20.2 years old going into the draft. That is very young. That is another metric that's super important for running backs coming into the draft. There are guys who were faster than him in the 40. That doesn't correlate quite as much. There were guys that had a better three cone and a better shuttle. That's fine. Is he explosive? No, but he runs through people. He's a big downhill runner. There aren't a lot of guys who are going to be able to bring him down if he gets into the second level. He's fast enough. He has really good advanced, the stats that they use for speed in the open field. He doesn't get into the open field to sprint very often, but when he does, his speed is absolutely just fine. Braelon Allen is 90. Where did it go? Oh, that's some good dead air right there. I'm doing this. Where did that go? Anyway, Braelon Allen is the prototype body and age and draft class of somebody who's going to be a top 12 finisher at least one or two times in his fantasy career, and he will remain my RB1 in the class. I have more, but let's get to you guys.
The thing is with him is, yeah, like all those metrics, people are very high on him. And some people are actually thinking that maybe he didn't test at the combine or on his pro day. He didn't run the 40 because he's already secured that draft capital. People have already invested in him. That remains to be seen. It's an interesting one, that age and the size. I'm worried about his speed, obviously, but with him not testing. So what are your thoughts on that there, Kev?
Yeah, Braelon is one of the weird ones for me because, you know, I do Devi. That's where my passion always has started from. So like I've really watched Braelon for a long time, and I was probably what you consider a hater for a while. I always said he should play edge because he probably make more money because of how big he is and just like his size and all of that. But then, so what I did is going into the guide, I said, I got to get rid of these preconceived notions about these guys. So I went in with like just a blank slate. I watched the tape, all 22, and went in there. And he's pretty much settled as a top 5 guy for me, which I was surprised by because like I've never been a Braelon guy. And for me, like, I don't mind him not testing, is what it is. I don't think it would have helped him in any way, possibly, because he probably knows what his numbers are. And he's probably, yeah, I'm not going to do that, which is fine because I think he's produced at a pretty high level since he was 17 his freshman year. And he's young when he took it. And look at the running back class. It's pretty old with the COVID years and everything there. There's a lot of older guys in this class. So like Braelon is one of those guys that can kind of step on the field, is a young guy, has a little bit more upside for Dynasty in that way. Very powerful runner, like missed tackles forced. He's okay in the open field. I think he's at 50 according to PFF or something like that, which is not bad. And I think to me, Braelon is interesting. I put him at 5 because it's reality is I don't know what to do with him. If he goes to a great spot, he'd probably jump up for me because, hey, if he can find that landing spot in that role. I really like, I'm a Dallas fan. I think the Cowboys are going to like Braelon Allen, and I think that he would fit what they're trying to probably do on offense, and based on capital, possibly. I don't think they'd use a round 1-2 pick on a running back, even though it looks like they need one pretty bad, like 3-4 in that range. And if he went there where he could be that 1-2 punch with whatever they bring in, or any team where they're like, hey, we need that 1-2 punch of guys on this roster, and we feel like it could be that guy, Braelon would be rise up my board, and he probably rise up my draft board for me because I think he's just one of those guys that can score touchdowns in the NFL, and I think that's okay. If he's one of those guys that can get volume, and he can handle volume. So if he can handle volume and score touchdowns ahead of some of these older prospects and running backs that are more pass catchers and those type of things, Braelon to me is worth the shot, depending on the value. But he's going like mid-second, late second round-ish, like in that range, that's worth the value if he finds a fun spot.
And we get into this mode in Dynasty where we're looking for the ultimate 3-down back, and he's not that, and I'm not going to ever say that he is. But if you look at the environment in the NFL of running back situations, it's a running back by committee, and everybody is moving more towards that. So what you're going to see is you're going to see more guys who are first and second down runners, and then you're going to see guys who are more like Jahmyr Gibbs, guys that are going to be able to catch the pass. Braelon Allen isn't terrible in the receiving game. He just didn't do it a whole lot because it's not necessary. If you're handing the ball off to a guy who's, and I found it, 95th percentile in height and 95th percentile in weight, 81st percentile in wingspan, and 91st percentile in the bench press, who's going to want to tackle that guy? So basically he's going to be running through this new era of smaller linebackers. He's going to be, as long as the offensive line is making holes for him, he's going to be able to do that. He's not going to be a one-cut back. He's going to go downhill, hit a hole in a power game, and just bulldoze his way. That's the perfect goal line back. That's a David Montgomery, Jamal Williams type of profile, on top of the fact that he's going to be able to average over 4 yards per carry with his size. If he gets a specific amount of carries per year, he's going to be able to exceed 1,000 yards, and he's likely going to be in the 8 to 12 touchdown range. And as a running back, that's going to put you in the top 12 in fantasy. As a guy who I'm banking on in rookie drafts, there aren't a lot of guys that have the downsides of the other guys in my rookie drafts are worse to me than the downsides to Braelon Allen, because Braelon Allen fits the profile, and the other guys, there's a lot to like about certain guys. Jalen Wright, for example, Marshawn Lloyd. There's a lot to like about them. But Braelon Allen fits what the NFL needs in a running back committee, and that's your Thunder and your Lightning. I think the Cowboys would be a perfect fit because if you got Braelon Allen and then start working Deuce Vaughn into your Lightning mode, where like guys can't find him because he's that to me is the perfect landing spot for Braelon Allen.
I just moved him up my board just because of your passion. Like,
you're welcome.
One spot. I'll put him up one spot. Okay. Now let's talk about my spotlight. All right. I didn't add music to mine, so we're going to get into Ladd McConkey, and he is my spotlight, my flag plant. Many people are already comparing him to this year's Puka Nacua. Not sure how you can compare him to Puka, because Ladd he's going to garner second, if not first round draft capital. But Puka, they have a similar edge to them, so I guess that's where it comes from. However, he comes with that same type of swag. People are drafting him in the first round, second round, McConkey at this stage. I wasn't quite there 3 weeks ago, but I am now. I love McConkey. He's fast. He's a burner off the line. He is dangerous after the catch, and he's pretty good in the intermediate routes as well. McConkey is a great separator. He won't win much downfield or win any contested catches battles because he's not that big, but he will be in position to get first round draft capital, I think, and that will put him in a spot to start right away. With that sub 4.4 he ran at the combine, that puts him in really, really fast company. People were comparing him to Edelman and Welker, but those guys never even came close to that speed when they were at the combine. So I'm liking McConkey. He's being crowned as one of the best route runners in the class. He's up to my wide receiver 5 right now, only behind Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, Adunze, and Troy Franklin. He probably won't move up any further, even if he gets a juicy landing spot. But his route running abilities will get him there, and he's in the same tier with Worthy and Franklin and Thomas, in my opinion. His yards per route run was an impressive 2.54, which is ranking him 5th in the class. His 3.62 yards per route run in 2023 only puts him behind Malik Neighbors, and that's a metric I put a lot of stock in when I'm evaluating these rookie prospects. And another interesting metric that he did really well on, and it's popping up all over the place now, is the first downs per route run by Ryan Heath. He's been plugging that pretty solidly right now. Ladd McConkey is ranked 3rd in the class with that, behind only Neighbors and Marvin Harrison. So that's meaning he's being targeted heavily when the team needs him the most to convert on a first down. So another really cool stat that I found, that McConkey has led this wide receiver group with the highest QB rating when he is targeted, 136.3, meaning the quarterbacks love him. He's a smart player. He can create after the catch. He can attack on all three levels. Like I mentioned, he won't win much downfield, but his football IQ and his route running prowess will garner him first round, if not early second round draft capital. And that puts him in really good spot for me. He keeps rising up, but I think he's plateaued at my wide receiver 5. A couple months ago, he wasn't there, but he's being drafted like that now. And so I'm going to flag plant Ladd McConkey as a guy I'm heavily invested in 2024. And he is my wide receiver 5 in this rookie class.
What are your thoughts, Kevin? And before you answer, I'm going to put you on the spot real quick, because in the Dynasty Pulse mock draft that we did, Ladd McConkey was available to you at the 3.1, and you took Xavier Legette. Explain yourself. Sorry.
I did it. I did that?
Yeah, you did that.
Oh.
Unless there's another Du Bois.
There is.
That was probably
with Kevin Coleman's avatar and sleeper.
If I did that, then I definitely auto-picked on accident, because I would have taken
it. Was a long time ago. Don't worry.
It was well over a month ago, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. To me, with Ladd, you said it all, but I think the biggest thing for me was when he tested the way he did, 8.45 RAS, relative athletic score during the combine, hit that 4.39 40. I think everybody should just realize what he is. He's probably a top 5 guy, 5 to 7 in that range. And if he gets early day 2 capital, or maybe late day 1, depending where he's at, like, we shouldn't overthink it. 3-year kid has a ton of potential and a ceiling, I think, over some of those other guys, like these kind of older wide receivers in that range. Even I think the interesting case is Ladd versus Adonai Mitchell, like AD Mitchell. I think it's funny because Mitchell is the type of guy that you've been seeing the narrative talk about how he takes plays off. And McConkey's the guy that never takes a play off. So it's like a funny kind of like, all right, are you going to go with the ceiling upside? Like, because Mitchell has a ton, or Ladd, who couldn't get on the field very much. He definitely struggled in terms of the injuries there, but he's so damn creative and dynamic after the catch. Like, for me, the NFL is moving to a lot of cover 2, and you're seeing a lot of 2 high safeties. You're seeing a lot of different stuff that they're doing. Ladd is the type of guy that knows how to just keep plays alive and find open spots and zones, and he can be a quarterback's best friend. So when you're looking at targets, Ladd is the type of guy that can earn targets, and he can if they get the ball in his hands, he can be special. And we actually comped him to Julian Edelman in our guide, that kind of same mindset in terms of just finding the open zone, creating targets, creating opportunities for his quarterback. The landing spot would be fun to watch. Like I said with Worthy, I would love Ladd to go to the Panthers too. I think that would be fun in terms of, hey, he could be that guy that just gives his quarterback time, opportunity, targets, and just is sure-handed too. Like, I think he has some of the best hands in this class. So Ladd, to me, he fits in that range. I think that's totally fine with that range in there. I think I have him at 6 or ish, like around that range. And if he's sitting there at the early second, he's going a lot of the early second now, like 201 to 204 in that range. That is perfectly fine value for Ladd McConkey.
I like that you guys are high on Ladd McConkey. I am higher on Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey is my wide receiver 3 in this class, and I'll tell you why. Number one, the comp that I give him is Hunter Renfrow. That is a better comp to me than Julian Edelman, purely because of his usage rate in 2021. Ladd is an absolute route technician, okay? So he's going to get himself open, and he, like you said, he has great hands. He's going to be the quarterback's best friend. Another comp that I like is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has the potential to become the number 1 target on whatever team he goes to, regardless of where he lines up on the field. Now, the Undroppables, shout out Chalk, shout out Undroppables, look for our content on the Undroppables, came out with a charting of specific metrics, and I did a breakdown of it. I did an analysis of it. And Ladd McConkey was 3rd in the class in first downs per route run, which Mike brought up, and it's a critical metric that we're starting to really dig into at this point. Yards per route run against zone coverage, Ladd was also 3rd in the class. And this is the big 2. Yards after the catch per reception and missed tackles forced per reception, he was 4th in the class. Okay? So this is a guy who is going to get the ball against zone coverage, be the quarterback's best friend. And when he gets the ball, he's A, going to make people miss, and B, he's going to turn every reception into something bigger. So if he has a mid field target range in the 7 to 12 range. Like Hunter Renfrow, you talk about third and Renfrow was the nickname that Raiders fans had for Hunter Renfrow. You're getting Ladd McConkey in the 7 to 12 yard range of the field. He's going to turn that into a 15-yard play, a 20-yard play, because he's an absolute dog. So I took these metrics and I went through and I assigned different values to things like the first downs per route run. I multiplied that score times 3, and I did the missed tackles forced per reception time. I multiplied that by 2. And Ladd McConkey came out as the number 2 receiver in the metric. The top of the second tier, Malik Neighbors was the only player that scored higher than he did. We know through analysis that the number 1 correlation between success in the NFL or success in fantasy and is draft capital. If Ladd McConkey is taken as the 3rd, 4th, or 5th, or even 6th wide receiver off the board in the first round, he is going to have the draft capital that will vault him into the usage rates that he needs to eventually be a top 12 wide receiver, and that's what we're looking for. So Ladd McConkey is my guy. If I'm coming down to it, I'm taking Marvin Harrison Jr. over him just because he's going to have the highest draft capital. I'm taking Malik Neighbors over him just because his metrics are off the board. There's nobody else after that except for Ladd McConkey. So flag plant applauded, Mike.
Oh, thanks. Awesome. That was an awesome show. Kev, you were such a great guest. Your analysis is just so in-depth. It comes right naturally to you. It's such an honor to have you on the show. You want to tell all the viewers again where they can find your stuff and whatnot?
Yeah, you can find most of my Dynasty content over at Football Guys. And
right.
you can
I was trying to highlight you and just make you the guy.
No, that was awesome. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna roll with this. You can find my Dynasty content over at Football Guys. I do some articles when I have time. This is a side thing for me. I'm an assistant principal, so I can't write as much as I wish I could, but I did put out a piece this week about risky Dynasty quarterbacks, what you should be doing with them. We have our Dynasty podcast, which we do once a week, Christian Williams and Jeff Bell. And then we do some Devy stuff. So if you're interested in college football, we have a Patreon, we have a Discord. It's only $5 a month. We do combined Dynasty Devy rankings to help you value your Devy assets, which is really tough. We do a bunch of all 22 breakdowns on the Patreon, all kinds of other stuff. And we have a YouTube channel that we do a lot of breakdowns like that too, the Devy Royale.
So that's the Devy Royale, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question real quick, Kevin?
Sure, of course.
Why do so many school administrators and teachers play so much fantasy football and also do fantasy football content creation?
I think for teachers, it's a little easier because I do think that you have more time off. So all the breaks that you get in terms of Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, and then I also think it's a very natural transition from teaching to also teaching about fantasy football because you're building lesson plans and you're building like how to teach people how to play, those type of things. The guy I love more than anybody in the space, and I wish people followed him more because he deserves more cred. Sam Wallace from Fantasy Life. He's a fellow teacher as well. But that guy is the best writer in fantasy football. And he doesn't do as much anymore because he's lazy. I'm just kidding. He has kids and he's got a job and stuff. But his ability to transform what he wants you to know about a prospect or a theory or whatever is just from teaching. And you could tell because I'm a teacher and I do that too. And so I think that, and the summers off help too. Yes, some summers off. Now, I'm transitioning because I'm as an administrator, I don't get as many days off. Like it's spring break this week. This is my first day off this week. So I've had to learn how to deal with that. But I'm on the dark side, as people call it now. So like I've had to learn how to deal with that side of it. But that's probably a big part of it, just because teachers know how to teach, and it's fun to help others in terms of fantasy. That's how I looked at it when I started. I was like, you know what, I could do this too, because I'm generally if I could teach a 14-year-old how to write an essay in 30 minutes, I'm pretty sure I could teach a 40-year-old man how to play fantasy football.
I was just trying to mess with you. Shout out to all the teachers. Greinberg is a teacher as well. We have Bradley Stalder, our boss at Player Profiler. He's a teacher. Dan from Undroppables, he's a teacher. Rep Manuel from Fantasy and Frames, he's a teacher. I was a counselor and a coach. So it's a natural transition. And I was just more alluding to your, like, why do school people have so much free time? But spring break, summer, that answers the question. Like idle time, go ahead and create content. But it was awesome to have you on the show. Mike and I we've looked up to you for a long time. We both are big fans. Love Football Guys. Been reading Football Guys content for a long time, and it was a pleasure for us to have you, and also in the mock draft that we did to kick off the mocking season. We definitely invite you to A, be on more podcasts, and B, get into more mock drafts that we're doing, because I think your content is very valuable, and everybody that follows us and will listen to us in the future, they have a lot to gain from your analysis. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Okay, kick off this show. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Grindberg at FFCanuck99 on Twitter or on X. And Biggs, you want to tell everybody where you can find you?
Go to BigBone@FFB on Twitter. That's where you can find my Twitter stuff. Also, Uncovered is a series by the Undroppables. I do the Raiders Unrivaled. Mike does the Chiefs content. We do non-fantasy NFL team specific content over at the Undroppables. I also write a Debbie article for the Undroppables. I got to get an article out because there's been nothing going on the last couple months, and so spring games and stuff like that. I gotta adjust, get some content out there. Also, Dynasty Pulse. Thank you, Fantasy Football Plus, Bradley Stalder. Go ahead and subscribe to this video. And Mike and I are launching a brand new venture with the Fantasy Football Advice Network, the biggest sponsor of the Expo this season. We are launching the Fantasy Forecast with Grindberg and Biggs. We're going to record that a little bit later tonight and launch that in the next week or so. That's another big platform. Player Profiler, follow Player Profiler News and find blurbs in the AFC West that Mike and I have written, and also other stuff that we have edited and published. And then also go to TikTok, Player Profiler News, YouTube, Player Profiler News, and you will see our gorgeous faces slaying all over the internet, and that's where you can find us. So thank you guys for watching. We hope you win.
Peace out.